all started with a fictional character. We are going to be reading from chapter 5, and we are on Isle Esme. So, here we go. Then I was faced with a dilemma I hadn't considered. What was I supposed to put on? Not a swimsuit, obviously. But it seemed silly to put back on my clothes back on too. I didn't even want to think about things Alice had packed for me. My breathing started to accelerate again, and my hands trembled. So much for the calming effects of the shower. I started to feel a little dizzy, apparently a full-scale panic attack on the way. I sat down on the cool tile floor in my big towel and put my head between my knees. I prayed he wouldn't decide to come and look for me before I could pull myself together. I could imagine what he would think if he saw me going to pieces this way. It wouldn't be hard for him to convince himself that we were making a mistake. And I wasn't freaking out because I thought we were making a mistake. Not at all. I was freaking out because I had no idea how to do this, and I was afraid to walk out of this room and face the unknown, especially in French lingerie. I knew that I wasn't ready for that yet. How did people do this? Swallow all their fears and trust someone else so implicitly with every imperfection and fear that they had, with less than the absolute commitment Edward had given me? If it weren't Edward out there, if I didn't know in every cell of my body that he loved me as much as I loved him, unconditionally and irrevocably, and to be honest, irrationally, I'd never be able to get up off of this floor. But it was Edward out there. So I whispered the words, "Don't be
well, you are the only exception. You are the only exception.
Under my breath and scrambled to my feet. I hitched the towel tighter under my arms and marched determinedly from the bathroom, past the suitcase full of lace and the big bed without looking at either, out the open glass door into the powder-fine sand. Everything was black and white, bleached colorless by the moon. I walked slowly across the warm powder.
I skimmed and beat, and when I caught you, you were out of reach. But I'm sure
Pausing beside the curb, he had left his clothes. I laid my hand against the rough bark and checked my breathing to make sure it was even, or even enough. I looked across the low ripples back in the darkness, searching for him. He wasn't hard to find. He stood his back to me, waist deep in the midnight water, staring up at the oval moon, the pallid light of the moon turning his skin a perfect white, like the sand, like the moon itself. It made his wet hair black as the ocean. He was motionless, his hands resting palms down against the water. The low waves broke around him as if he were a stone. I stared at the smooth lines of his back, his shoulders, his arms, his neck, the flawless shape of him. The fire was no longer a flash burn across my skin. It was low and deep now. It smoldered away all my awkwardness, my shy uncertainty. I slipped the towel off without hesitation, leaving it on the tree with his clothes and walked.
check it out. I drove this love is crazy. I do it on the daily. They treat me really nice. Give me by me all these eyes. Don't you
It made me pale as the snowy sand too. I couldn't hear the sound of my footsteps as I walked to the water's edge, but I guessed that he could. Edward did not turn. I let the gentle swells break over my toes and found that he'd been right about the temperature. It was very warm, like bath water. I stepped in, walking carefully across the invisible ocean floor, but my care was unnecessary. The sand continued perfectly smooth, sloping gently towards Edward. I waded through the weightless current till I was at his side, and then I placed my hand lightly over his cool hand lying on the water. Beautiful, I said, looking up at the moon too. It's all right, he answered, unimpressed. He turned slowly to face me. Little waves rolled away from his movement and broke against my skin. His eyes looked silver in his ice-colored face.